Hey guys, welcome to another video here on the AviationPro channel. In this video I'd like to give you a review of the brand new PMDG Boeing 737 NGXu. Quite an unexpected release by the PMDG team, and in this video I'll tell you all about it. First I'd like to clear up some of the confusion as to what the NGXu actually is in comparison to the old NGX and the new NG3. And also we'll just take a look at the exterior, the interior of the aircraft, review the cockpit systems and sounds, and we'll also take a look at some comparisons between the old NGX and this new Boeing 737. And of course we'll explore all the options that are available, and I'll give you some concluding remarks as to whether buying this new Boeing 737 add-on is worth it. So again, this is quite an unexpected release because we were all anticipating that the NG3 would be released for Prepar3D as well. However, then Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 came around, and as you have seen in the previews, it's an amazing simulator, and PMDG actually decided to solely develop the new NG3 only for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. However, they actually decided that they don't want to let down the Prepar3D users and already give you a chance to get a taste of the new NG3 in Prepar3D, and they have released it as a separate product line called the NGXu. So the NGXu is really a brand new Boeing 737. It's by all means not an updated version of the old NGX. It's built from the ground up using today's current standards in Prepar3D, with all the latest technologies for the best visuals, cockpit systems and all that. However, it's the Prepar3D platform still has its limitations, and the NG3 will solely be developed for FS 2020 using the features that FS 2020 gets, like all the new flight modeling stuff, icing, and all other kinds of technologies that we may not even know about. So I see personally the NGXu as kind of a step up version to the NG3, allowing you already to get a good taste and explore the new aircraft and all its options inside Prepar3D. Now the NGXu is available on the PMDG website for $99 US, and the great thing is if you buy this add-on before the 31st of December 2019, or technically before the 1st of January 2020, you'll be able to get a $99 discount on the new NG3 when it's released for FS 2020. So basically they estimate the price of the new NG3 for FS 2020 to be about $139. So in that case, getting the new license for the new NG3 will only cost you $40 if you buy the NGXu for Prepar3D before the 31st of December this year. Okay, so that's kind of how it works, and I think it's a nice deal. I mean, we've seen with FSX and Prepar3D, that you had to buy a new license for all aircraft when switching, and now with this deal, you can already get a taste of this new aircraft, and you don't have to, pay again for the full license when FS 2020 is released. Okay, so that's kind of how that works, and please refer to the details on the PMDG website if you want to know more about this. So without further ado, let's just take a look at the new aircraft. First we'll take a look at the exterior, and I have to say the exterior looks very nice. In the meantime, in Prepar3D, a lot of new stuff has been coming up, like PBR technology, very nice reflections, dynamic lights, and you really see this in the model of the 737. Of course, it's yet another 737, but seeing it in use using the latest technologies is really nice. And the PMDG team has done a really nice job on, getting the visuals right on the Boeing 737 with a lot more detail than before on the NGX. The movements of all the parts is very nice and smooth. Now, I'm not really an exterior guy. I usually stay in the cockpit and don't look outside that much, but I can definitely tell that they've put a nice amount of work in here, and all the control surfaces are moving very nicely. And also the wings, are very nicely done. Actually, using advanced modeling, they now, have realistic shake behavior. So when you, for example, taxi on the ground, or when you experience turbulence in the air, you have quite a nice and realistic wing bouncing and flex going on. So that's really nice. Now the new NGXu comes with 3 different models: the Boeing 737-800, the 737-900 and the 737-900ER, and all of those variants are available without winglets, with blended winglets, but also with the new split Skimitar winglets. So that's very nice. A lot of old Boeing 737 NGs have been retrofitted with this new winglet type, and it's really nice to actually see that in the sim. And of course the advanced simulation really takes into account what kind of winglet you're using, so it will affect the fuel burn very accurately depending on what kind of wing tip you're using. So let me just show you some different models. As you can see here, we have here the standard Boeing 737-800 with split skimmer winglets in the new PMDG livery. You can see a lot of reflections, and using the PBR technology, it looks really nice. So depending on your location and on how the sun reflects, the model just looks very nice. And this is what the aircraft looks like at night. And as you can see, again with dynamic lighting technology, all the lights look very realistic. In the wingtips, and the anti-collision lights just really reflects very well. And with the new NGXu, you also have options to choose some of the new systems that were introduced in the Boeing 737 NG, like the new LED lights. You may know from other videos from the real world, and maybe real world cockpit videos, and the landing lights on new NG aircraft have actually changed, so they are now LED, allowing you to make use of the lights in the wing for both taxi and landing lights. So it looks pretty cool. Here we have the Aeromexico livery. As you can see, it looks very nice as well. There are many liveries available in the PMDG Operations Center. And this one is here at night as well, as you can see, but this one has the original landing lights. So as you can see, it's quite different. Landing lights that actually extend from the belly of the Boeing 737, and that takes some time to illuminate. So a lot of options here available again. And at night you will have a very enjoyable experience viewing your aircraft from the outside using all the dynamic lighting technology. So those are the main models that are available right now. I think PMDG will also work on expansion packages later on, allowing you also to fly things like the Boeing 737 MAX, which should be available as well later on. I'm not sure how, in what terms that will be available for the NGXu versus the NG3, but make sure that you visit and pay attention on the PMDG website for more updates on that. The only small problem I found, and I think some other people have found as well, is that the slats on the wing kind of go dark when it's dark outside, and this may seem like some sort of PBR issue, but I think PMDG is actually aware of it and will probably come with an update. But in general, the exterior model was just well done. As you can see, there's not much to say about it, just enjoy it. And we'll take a look at the most important part of any PMDG product, and that's of course the cockpit and the interior. So welcome into the cockpit of the new Boeing 737 NGXu by PMDG, and I think it's just amazing. It's definitely a huge improvement over the old NGX. Again, it's not an update of the NGX, it's built from the ground up, so everything is new, using the latest technologies, and you can definitely see that on the flight deck. I think one of the most important things that you can see is that the geometry of the cockpit is nice and correct. In the old NGX this was a problem. The windows were very big in order to allow the allow you to make use of the HUD, the head-up display. But right now the geometry is just correct. The windows look actually correct, and the entire atmosphere in this 737 cockpit feels genuine. It really feels like you are in this small office, and that's what I really like. They've really done a great job on actually modeling the cockpit and its dimensions correctly. But there's much more than that, of course. I mean, the textures have hugely improved. Using PBR technology, the reflections are accurate. So depending on how the sun moves through the cockpit, the different items reflect the sunlight. And then there's just a lot of little details that you'll find, and really improve the visuals. For example, the parking brake lever, as you can see, the red light of the parking brake lever actually lights up some of the other elements on the throttle quadrant, and that's just amazing. And in general, the texture quality is now very high. You will definitely see the difference, and we'll take a look at a comparison shortly as well. So in general, the cockpit just looks amazing. The displays are very nice, really high definition quality, like in real life, and also very smooth frame rate. So actually what you will definitely notice is that the frame rate of the primary flight display and the navigation display is really good. And again, this is just a cockpit that's built up using the latest technology, so you can really see that the texturing is very well done, the modeling is very well done. something as simple as the seat just looks amazing. As you can see, there's this sort of sheep fur, this soft seat. That's, by the way, I can tell you, it's very comfortable to sit in. But yeah, you can see it looks very nice, and they've done a really good job at recreating those seats as well. So in general, I think you can clearly see that the cockpit is a huge improvement over the old NGX. So let me just show you some comparison shots here in daylight. As you can see, there's quite a substantial difference. Of course, the windows are the main difference. That the geometry is just perfect compared to the old NGX, and definitely a huge improvement. But also the texturing is very well done, and it just looks like a genuine 737. The old NGX was never really a genuine 737. I think we've all seen the Zibo mod and X-Plane looking way more genuine, and finally the PMDG team has worked on a 737 that actually looks like a 737 cockpit, so that's really nice. So in terms of visuals, there's a lot for you to enjoy. The new NGXu also comes with the new PMDG Rainmaker, like you would find on the 747. So actually, rain will actually show up on the windows. The wipers actually work, so that's very nice. And you will also, depending on the conditions, especially in summer, in hot areas, you will also see bug splatters. So you will actually see insects splashing on your screen as you come in for landing at an airport. So that's quite interesting, very nicely done. And it adds to the atmosphere. It finally feels like a nice 737, and I just can imagine flying this 737 on a rainy day from one airport to another in this nice and comfy and cozy cockpit. Now from the cockpit you can also see the wings, so that's very nice. As you can see, they've modeled the wings a little bit so you can see it from the cockpit. There's no fully virtual cabin, which is of course understandable in order to save frame rates, but you can actually see the engine pylons and the wings from the cockpit, so that will really give you some nice views. You will really see this nice wing flex as you are at cruise altitude, and have some nice views from the cockpit over the wing, and enjoy the views from there. So very well done regarding that. Now also an improvement is the sounds, and the sounds again are up to par to the latest Boeing 747-8 with just a huge improvement over the old NGX. What you will find is that all switches have individual sounds, so not one switch will sound the same, and they sound very genuine. They've been recorded from the real world aircraft, and again this really adds to the atmosphere. But even a single switch has different recordings, so even that one switch will not always sound the same, and again this just adds to the realism, I think. So they've done really nice to that. So for example, let me just scroll some knobs here on the motor control panel. As you can hear, they all sound different, and that's logical. In the real world, you can actually use your hands and can feel what knob you're turning. Of course, in the sim, this is not really possible. But then at least you can, using the sound, you can distinguish what kind of knob on the MCP you're actually turning. So that's very nicely done. In general, the sounds on the flight deck are very nice. They've really put a lot of work in that. To make it sound like you are actually in the Boeing 737 cockpit. Let me just show you a few examples. First of all, the parking brake lever. As you can hear, it really has this nice metallic, click sound. Also the speed brake lever. And the trim is of course very important in the 737. They finally modeled the trim very accurately to the real thing, and that's really nice. So it moves and responds to the input on the yoke correctly, and can really nicely hear the trim wheel spinning as you use the trim. So that's very nicely done. I do miss a little bit of clatter maybe, you know, some of the old NG3s have more sort of a clatter sound to it, but that's okay. I mean, I'm already happy that the trim is properly functioning and that you actually hear a sound as soon as you use the electric trim switches on the yoke. Now I think where the new NGXu stands out is definitely the cockpit at night, because this is what it looks like, and as you can see, it just looks amazing. Again, using the latest technologies that are available in Prepar3D, and I'm sure that it will even look better in the new FS 2020 later on. All kind of different light switches have been modeled using dynamic lighting. So basically that will mean that, you know, different light sources, you know, project differently on all the knobs and switches. So if you turn on the floodlights, for example, you can really see them nicely and accurately reflect on all the knobs and switches and on the displays, for example. So that's really, really nicely done. Again, it really adds to the atmosphere. You'll really love flying at night with the new NGXu, and I'm sure also the NG3 later on in FS 2020. And again, I'll just show you some comparison shots between the old NGX and the new NGXu. As you can see, it does indeed look quite a bit different. You know, the floodlights in the old NGX were kind of based on textures, but the new floodlights in the NGXu are more based on actual dynamic lights. So you know, they really have a certain shape and position in the virtual environment that they, you know, kind of transmit their light in. A lot of technical stuff right here. It does eat away some frame rates, especially, you know, when it's raining as well, when there's just a lot of reflections to take into account. But I have to say, it just looks very amazing, and you can you know, really using the floodlights and also the backlights of the instruments, you can just really, you know, customize the look and the feel of the cockpit at night. And I think in general also the displays just look very accurate. In the you know, the old NGX, they kind of had this bluish hue to them, but the displays actually look a lot better right now at night as well in the new NGXu. So I hope that it gives you a good overview of the new cockpit that you will find in the Boeing 737 NGXu by PMDG. Let's take a look at some of the cockpit systems. I'm not going to go too much in depth in this, because I think we all know, you know, this is a PMDG aircraft. You can expect high quality simulation of hydraulics, fuel, the flight management system. You know, it all works as expected, and the LNAV and the VNAV functioning, the performance calculations inside the flight management system, they all work, you know, like they should. I haven't found any problems with that, so I don't have to go into detail that much. But I'll just tell you a little bit, you know, what makes this new NGXu, you know, kind of different from the old NGX, and you know, what makes it up to par with current add-ons of PMDG. You know, things like the fuel density, you know, they've really accurately modeled fuel density, so depending on your geographical location, you know, you might have to load more or less fuel depending on the fuel density that's actually there. So there are a lot of, you know, detailed quirks behind the scenes right there that are, you know, contributing to the complexity of this add-on aircraft. And for example, the heat of the displays, you know, the displays inside the cockpit generate heat, and you know, that heat is actually taken into account into the flight deck temperature. You know, so there are all these little detailed things that really make this a very advanced add-on. Of course, for you as a pilot, you know, that might not really matter, you know, that it all happens in the background. But I can assure you, you know, that the flight management system and all the systems that you will find on the overhead panel, for example, like the hydraulics, the fuel, the air conditioning, they all work the same way as in the real aircraft. So that's of course very nice. This is just again another advanced simulation, but in the background there's just so much more going on right now compared to the old NGX. Like I said, you know, the fluid dynamics of the hydraulics and the fuel, and the heat dynamics of the air inside the aircraft. So you can find more details about this on the PMDG website and probably also in the manual. I will highlight some items though. I think what you can see immediately if you enter the cockpit is that the NGXu now has a EFB, so an electronic flight bag, and you will find it on most Boeing 737s nowadays, and this is really very useful too. As you can see, you know, it allows you to do takeoff performance calculations. So previously you might have to use an external add-on like TopCat in order to do takeoff calculations depending on the wind and runway conditions. But you can now actually do that from within the aircraft. So you can actually, you know, do proper calculations without having to use an external program for that. The EFB also comes with other features that we also find on the 747-8, like Navigraph integration, so you can actually display your charts inside the EFB in the virtual cockpit. And also there's an airport map. Of course, in the 747-8 this will actually display on the navigation display. In the 737 this is not possible, but you do have a moving airport map on the EFB. So that's really nice if you are taxiing around a complex airport. And of course the EFB contains some other items that you will find out once you actually use it, like some pilot tools, so for some calculations and conversions and things like that. So yeah, it's just nice to have this EFB inside the aircraft. It really adds to the advanced simulation of the Boeing 737. And of course this aircraft also has an HUD, so you can actually use it. Now previously, again on the NGX, the windows were adjusted to actually make use of the HUD. Luckily that's not the case anymore, but you do actually have to set the view properly in order to actually be able to use it. As you can see from the default view, if you use chase plane for example, you probably won't see it. You kind of have to move forward and zoom in order to make use of the HUD. But that's of course no problem. It's really nice to have it, and in general, as you can see, there are just a lot of options out there. Like any PMDG aircraft, but even more so with the NGXu. So there's a lot of options in regards to aircraft options and equipment. You can decide, what kind of landing lights you like to have. Also, what's new on some NG aircraft is that there are new fuel switches. Like these newer style cutoff switches that you would also find on, for example, the 767. As you can see, they've also modeled that. So kind of, as a step up to the Boeing 737 MAX, which will come out later, hopefully. So you can already kind of make use of some of the new functions that are also, provided in new Boeing 737 NG aircraft in the real world. So again, just a lot of options that you can customize according to your own preferences, or maybe according to your real world airline. So that's very nice. Yeah, you will not be disappointed regarding that. The FMC, some people ask, whether there's a route to function available. Unfortunately, it isn't. I'm not really sure why they did not decide to model that. I don't know. It's one of those things that are not available. But in general, I think there's just a lot of options already to choose from. Of course, in the FMC you can also set key commands, so that's really nice. I always like to do that, set some keyboard keys, especially for the EFIS panel, for example. So that's all available. You can set a lot of options and key commands inside this aircraft. Now, of course, they also simulate ground operations, also in line with the more recent 747-8. You will be able to select ground services for ground power, vehicles around the aircraft, loading fuel and all that stuff. So that's all very nice. What's new, and new to the NGXu specifically, is that you now actually have a drivable pushback truck, which is kind of fun. You can now actually select the pushback truck, and then using your flight controls you can steer that pushback truck. You can also set a view, so you can view the aircraft from the pushback truck, so you can be a pushback truck driver. And it's kind of nice to do that. It's a little bit quirky, it's a little bit jaggy at times, especially in turns, but it works, especially if you need to do some sort of complex push-pull procedure. You might want to make use of this self-drivable pushback truck instead of using something like GSX, or maybe one of the more standard pushback functions, like 100 meters back, and then maybe a T-turn or something like that. You can now actually drive the pushback truck yourself, so it's kind of handy. As you can see from the cockpit, the yoke doesn't move, but then I'm moving my physical yoke in order to actually drive the pushback truck. So it's kind of nice, it's new, and it's I think quite a useful tool. So in general, you will not be disappointed with the new NGXu and all its systems, and especially the new EFB and all the customization that you can do inside the aircraft. But of course, the most important thing is, how does it fly? I mean, it's an aircraft after all, and what I usually like to do, especially with a new aircraft, is simply load the default scenario, set flaps, load it with 1/3 of fuel, empty payload, and just take off without any configuration. And I just want to experience what the aircraft feels like, and how different it is from maybe in the previous product. to say it somehow feels more genuine to a real aircraft. And I think, you know, we have to realize again, the NGX was a really old simulation, but I already felt this in, for example, the Boeing 747-8. It felt very genuine somehow. And I have the same with the new NGXu. It's really a joy to fly. Of course, it's still limited to the dynamics of the prepared simulator, but I'm sure with the more advanced dynamics in the FS 2020 simulator that's coming up, this is really going to be a joy to fly and very realistic. But somehow, as you can see, I'm just making some random turns here. Just it feels like you actually have wings under you, and I kind of miss this feeling in the NGX. As you can see, here's a takeoff with the NGX, and I'm going to do the kind of the same maneuvers with that aircraft. And it kind of, you know, it always sort of felt sluggish, you know, and also the yoke movement inside the cockpit always felt a little bit jerky. But you know, in the NGXu, it just feels more genuine. It feels more responsive. It feels more smooth. It feels more, you know, genuine to, you know, your actual yoke input, and that's what I really like. I really like that about the new NGXu. It's again a joy to hand fly, and of course, I'm not a real Boeing 737 pilot, but you know, I can definitely feel they've changed the dynamics here while in the air. So that's very nice indeed. And again, I'm hoping that using the new FS 2020, this will be even more so, because again, we have to realize Prepared has its limitations. It doesn't contain an advanced flight model as, for example, an X-plane or later an FS 2020. So I'm sure this will be even more realistic in FS 2020 later on, but only time will tell. Now on the ground, taxiing is a little bit challenging. They've really worked on the ground friction model for this thing, and basically it should feel a lot more realistic right now. You know, in Prepared, most of your aircraft kind of slide down a runway. It's not very realistic. You don't have a lot of grip. But right now with the NGXu, they've really worked on the ground friction model as well, so that taxiing is more realistic. However, taxiing and using the tiller is sort of, you know, very responsive, and that's because, you know, joysticks are just, you know, they're not the same as the real tiller in the aircraft, and they're very sensitive. So taxiing is a bit of a challenge. I know they are working on an update for this, so you can actually set some response curves and make sure that you can kind of set a null zone to make it feel more you know, realistic, because now the aircraft is kind of moving all about the place with just a little bit of tiller input on your joystick, for example. So it's something they are working on, but in general, the ground friction model can definitely, you know, you feel that the aircraft is braking. For example, when you make a sort of emergency stop and brake very hard, you can really feel the aircraft sort of bouncing. And also when landing, as you can see, I'm landing right here. Again, just without any configuration, just feeling what the aircraft feels like. Somehow the braking action feels much more realistic than the old NGX that was released many years ago. So you can definitely feel and notice that they've worked on this. So let's take a look at the landing and see how the aircraft kind of brakes.
100. 50. 40, 30, 20, 10.
So in general, this really is a joy to fly, especially in combination with, of course, the advanced system simulation. You can also simulate a lot of failures, so if you want to practice that, you can also simulate that, and that's of course very realistic. So there are a lot of options to choose from here. Now let's take a look at the performance. In general, it performs well, especially during daylight. I did find that at night, again with the dynamic lights, and especially when it's raining as well, the performance does drop a little bit. It's quite a heavy add-on because it makes use of the latest technologies, and I can imagine that, you know, in FS 2020 this will be even worse, because then the entire sim will be kind of different, you know, and using different you know, resources, and will be much more heavier on the system. So compared to the old NGX, at least, it does eat some more frames, and especially when using the dynamic lights in the cockpit. There are some things that you can do. You can simply make less use of floodlights. Maybe you can also in the FMC have some options to reduce the frame rate of certain displays. So there's some options, so you can kind of play around with that. But you will find that the performance is a bit worse compared to the old NGX, and it's more in line with the for example the 747-8. But again, it doesn't make it unflyable. I think with the smooth displays right now that you have, even in low frame rate conditions, you can simply still fly this aircraft properly, and that's, I think, very important. The frame rate, it doesn't really matter anymore. It's really about the smoothness of the entire system. And I think flying, for example, into Amsterdam with the old NGX was really a problem, and it is less so with the NGXu. Even though it's heavier, simply the smoother system controls and the smoother displays allow you to much better manage the aircraft under low frame rate conditions. So I would not worry about that too much. I think it's simply a fact that we have to accept. We're moving into a new advanced world of simulation, especially with the new FS 2020. So it's really nice to have these new technologies, and if it eats some frame rates away, that's okay in my opinion. And I still absolutely enjoy this aircraft, and even when the frame rates are low. Now, of course, the aircraft also comes with some nice manuals that you can find in the documentation, with a tutorial, introduction to the aircraft, the QRH, things like that. You just your standard set and array of manuals, so you can get going with this aircraft with tons of pages of information, so you can really learn a lot about the NGXu. There's also some pages dedicated to kind of the differences between the old NGX and some of the Quirks. I would definitely review that. There may be some items that you were used to, or some procedures that you were used to in the old NGX, and that are now different in the NGXu because it's more realistic. So make sure that you're aware of that. The manual covers some of those things, and also some of the quirks that the beta team wanted you to know about. So definitely make sure that you review the manual before you fly the aircraft, so you can get to know about all that. The new NGXu also comes with a new Operations Center. The Operations Center, is set for the future of PMDG itself as well, especially with their new global flight operations that's coming out soon. With the new Operations Center, it's not much different from the old one, just a different look and feel to it. You can just, install liveries, update your aircraft, update the Operations Center, so you can give that a nice review. So in general, let's put a conclusion to this video, and I can understand there's quite a bit of reluctance or maybe confusion. It's yet another 737. Do I really have to buy this? Why would I buy this and not use the old NGX or maybe the Zibo mod in an X-plane, for example? And those are all valid questions, I think. I mean, I have to be honest with you here. When I first opened up the NGXu, I did not get the same feeling that I got when I first opened, for example, the Boeing 747-8 of PMDG. And that's because, it's yet another 737. It's the same aircraft that you're, used to flying a lot, in Prepar3D. But once you start to explore some of the functions, the new functions, especially the new EFB, and all the details that are behind the system simulation, and once you actually start to look in the cockpit and look at the textures, the dynamic lighting and the atmosphere in the cockpit and the correct geometry, it just looks amazing. And also with the Rainmaker, for example, it just really feels like a genuine 737 right now. And I think it's worth it personally, especially if you're going to upgrade to FS 2020 later on. I mean, this is the perfect opportunity to already make use of some of the latest technologies and to fly an up-to-date 737 in Prepar3D before you start switching to FS 2020, because otherwise you would have to get a license again later on, paying the full price without having had the time to enjoy the aircraft already Prepar3D. Because let's face it, it's probably going to take a while before FS 2020 is going to be released. So in general, is it worth it? I think it's worth it. I mean, you have to realize that the old NGX is just an old airplane. It's ported over from FSX, and again, this just feels and looks like a genuine 737. The NGX was always a bit sluggish. The geometry was off, and I think with the new NGXu and the NG3 later on, you will definitely just get a very realistic experience. Also with all the failures that you can simulate. So personally I think it's worth it. I hope through this review you kind of had a look at what the aircraft feels and looks like. You know, again, it's a PMDG aircraft, so I would not worry too much about the depth of the system simulation. But I think what's really interesting to see is you know, how this aircraft will develop, especially in regards to flight dynamics in FS 2020. You know, using all the latest technologies that are available in there. So again, personally, I think it's worth it. I hope through this review you can kind of form your own opinion. And you know, otherwise just wait for the NG3, kind of see, you know, what that looks like and what kind of features it will bring using those technologies that come with it. And I'm definitely looking forward to the future. In general, I think we can be happy that PMDG will develop for this new platform, which looks amazing, and it gives some hope that, you know, the other aircraft in their fleet will be added to FS 2020 as well. So I hope you enjoyed this review, and thank you for watching this video here on the AviationPro channel. I hope to make a flight with the new NGXu on VATSIM and make a video about that as well. But as you know, I'm personally heading into flight training very soon, so I probably won't have much time for flight simming in the near future. But I will definitely try my best to, you know, feature this brand new aircraft in a future VATSIM flight, for example. And make sure that you also visit the PMDG website for all the details and also with updates. I think at the time of making this video they actually pushed out an update, so, you know, with PMDG you don't have to worry about that. They are quite open and, you know, active on the community support forum as well, so you can you know, get to know the latest status on updates. And I think we can all look forward to a bright future with the new FS 2020. So we'll stay tuned with that. So thanks for watching this video, and I will see you on the next one.